Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Is That More Brandon Sharing Thoughts podcast. So, in today's podcast, I'm actually going to be talking about a film that I watched quite recently. So, this film is called Straw, and it came out in 2025, so I'm only a year late. But I think this is the thing when it comes to films. I am trying to watch things as they kind of come out, but if it happens to be a little bit later or a little bit more delayed, then actually, I'm not kind of posting for relevance or, posting for, clout or whatever they call it nowadays. It's more just, I've actually watched that film. I'm going to review it just so in the future, if I look back, I can go, oh, I remember watching that film. It was about X, Y, and Z. So the main premise of this film, so we see a single mother called Janaya, and her name is mentioned and said so many times in an American accent. It's like, Janaya, Janaya, that is very... Yeah, it's a very easy name, and it's a lovely name as well, Janaya. It's a beautiful name. It's kind of like Alia. Things that have a bit of y in it are quite nice names. But anyway, away from the name, Janaya, although it's a lovely name, the whole film is not so lovely. So we basically see the single mother who, I think she's living with a cousin, and she's got a daughter, and her job is working in a school and things like that. So just a standard lady, she's a single mother. Whatever happened to the father, I don't think we ever found out. But yeah, single mother, she's got a daughter, and yeah, life seems to be all right. But there's obviously lots of different complications and issues and things like that all happen at the same time. And I think for me, this film is kind of like proof that if you're having a bad day, bad things are just gonna constantly keep happening to you, and if they do, it's just an unfortunate thing. But at the same time, you do get those glimmers of light, you do get those glimmers of sunshine where either something good will happen to you, or the right person will be attracted to you or your situation, and they can actually come to your rescue, which actually did happen in this film, for example. So yeah, although the beginning and middle of the film kind of weren't great, and the ending wasn't too great either for Janaya, the actual, the messages behind the film, and it's every time something bad happens, you go, oh no, not that again, or oh no, not that again. So I think for me, yeah, the overall of the story was this single mother living at home, and I think she was working and things like that, and I think she basically had a call. I don't know how it all started, but I think she initially had a call that she needed to go to the school and see her daughter, because her daughter didn't have enough money for food for lunch day, or you know how parents usually top up their kids' voucher or lunch money allowance or whatever it is. So she only needed to put £40 on, and she just payday hadn't happened, so she hadn't been able to do that. So yeah, it was all there was just a lot going on. So I think initially she had the people that she was living with and obviously renting off of them. They were saying, look, we need money to pay rent and things like that, otherwise you're out. Obviously at her work, she was getting these calls about her daughter and needing the money for lunch money, otherwise her daughter wasn't going to be able to eat. And I think she needed to get medication as well. And then, yeah, basically throughout the film, when she was driving from the job, initially when she was at her job, she was taking a few phone calls, and yeah, the boss basically caught her on her phone, so that wasn't great. So she basically almost threatened to have her job lost, and she was like, no, I just genuinely need to, get money from the bank to help my daughter. Like, this is actually kind of an emergency. So yeah, at first he kind of was like, absolutely not, and then was like, right, I'm going to give you this many hours. So she had this many hours. During those hours, she obviously ended up in some sort of car crash. So she was driving, and this guy happened to just crash into her. Turned out he was actually a policeman, but when he did pull her over, he was basically very aggressive, very not polite, not how you would expect a policeman or woman to be. And yeah, obviously that put her in a bit of shock, and obviously she's now got a broken car, and she's literally just trying to go get some money. And then you end up seeing her again at her office. So she was at the office trying to, get back to work, I guess. And she was in the office with the manager, and she basically said, I need my money now, I need my paycheck right now. And he was just like laughing and things like that. And then these two robbers came in. So, again, at first, the manager thought and had reported her for kind of setting up this crime scene thing, but they were just two random people that she did not know. She found a gun, basically ended both of them, and because the manager kind of wasn't listening to her, she took him out as well. So, yeah, she was obviously covered in blood, and, you know, she was there standing holding a rifle or whatever she was holding. So, yeah, that put her in bad news again. And then obviously with her clothes that were covered and, you know, the situation that she'd left behind, you kind of had the police going, no, she's a danger, you know, she has to go to prison and things like that. And then you had this one female police officer who kind of saw the other side, who was like, well, hang on, what if it was just a coincidence? You know, it was an accident, it was an armed robbery, it was whatever. And it was almost like she was the voice of reason. She was the voice that Janiyah actually was able to listen to. I think it took a bit of time to, you know, build up that courage and build up that rapport with her. And that's not really the way you go about catching people, you know, being all nice and friendly and cute and emotional. But sometimes you have to use a different method or a different way of connecting with people and going, look, I completely understand why you would have done what you've done and things like that, just in case they do have something bad on them or, you know, cause and make a scene even worse. And then last but least, to top it all up, so she ended up getting her check finally. I think she ended up writing it herself. She went to the bank, obviously covered in a state, and she didn't have her ID. And she obviously had the rifle from the previous place, so she kind of threatened the person at the till, even though she knew who she was as well, which was, again, just really weird. It's like, if you know someone, you kind of just do them a favour when they're struggling. Anyway, she ended up telling them to lock the bank, and there was about 5 or 6 customers in the bank, and she said, look, I'm not here to do anything bad, I just want my money, but, you know, the police are all outside now and I don't want to go out there because I know that they're going to basically take me out and that's me done for. So she ended up having these 6 or 7 people hostage, and, you know, that whole scene was chaotic. I mean, it must have been incredible and incredibly fun to film the whole thing, like kind of reenacting like what a crime scene would be and all of that. And, you know, the acting from everyone was absolutely fantastic, especially the lady who played Janiyah, you know, very emotional, very emotive, very confident lady. And, you know, I don't think I've seen her in any films before, and obviously this was only from last year, so, you know, she might still be making content and things like that. But yeah, very passionate, very emotive, and the perfect lady for the role as well. And it was nice to see a more female cast as well. I think majority of the cast were people that were black, or from black cultures, which is, again, incredible to see, because you don't want just to have white actors and white actresses and white directors and white musicians and everything like that, because they're great, they're lovely, but then it doesn't show equality. You know, you want to have a variety of different people all along the film. You want to have people from different races, different genders, different backgrounds, different walks of life, you know, different journeys to get into whichever industry they've got into, whether they're an actor, a sound engineer, a cameraman, a director, a producer, whatever. You kind of want the best of everyone or everywhere, really. So yeah, Janiyah, massive props to the lady who played her as well. But yeah, like I said, that whole scene where they were in the bank, where she kind of almost had everyone hostage, she wasn't actually holding them hostage. It was more of, I guess, to protect herself, because she knew if they were to open the door and go outside, or if the police would get in, she would be done for, because that one horrible policeman was outside. And also, in that situation, you don't know who to trust. You know you're going to be going to prison because of the accidental mishaps that happened throughout the day. So yeah, when she was talking to the police officer, the female officer, she managed to build that rapport. She managed to find the police officer who treated her awfully, got him off of the scene. So that was him gone. And then there was a few ladies that were in the bank who were just trying to explain to Janiyah that, you know, what she was doing. It's not that it was wrong, it was more of just her emotions were almost taking the better of her, really. Like, you know, she shouldn't be holding these people in there. One of the ladies had an issue where she wasn't able to sit down for too long or stand up for too long, or whatever her issue was, so she actually let her out. You know, she doesn't actually want to hurt any of these people, but she ended up in a situation where it looks like she does. And then she also had a science project that her daughter had created, that was one of the items that the family member threw out. And again, because she wasn't able to get that rent money, she just had all of her belongings chucked on the floor. So she had this see-through bag with this science experiment, you know, the daughter's kit, like toys and things like that. But this science experiment looked as if it was a homemade device, is how I'm going to phrase that. So yeah, in the bank, she's got this bag with this flashing thing. They're all freaking out. The police are all freaking out. Even between the two different policing teams, they were all arguing between themselves. And it's almost like you had one department who were like, look, we're on it. We're building this emotional connection. We're trying to get through to this Janiyah lady to try and get her to come out. And then you had the other team who were like, no, this is taking too long. She might have a device and, wasting people's time and da-da-da. So you had kind of more the aggressive team and the more kind of relaxed and we're under control. We've got it under control kind of team. But in the end, toward the end of the film, she was persuaded to almost come out of the bank. Everyone else was set free. Everyone was allowed to go off home or get help or whatever emotional support that they needed. And you basically just saw Janiyah in the back of a police car. She knew where she was going and she knew she wasn't going to be able to fight back. It's just, I think, the whole story, it was just a whole film of accidents and coincidences of things happening badly to her. It's almost like she knew she had those bills to pay. She didn't have that check. She accidentally, killed her boss. She accidentally looked like she was keeping people hostage in the bank. She was covered in stains. She had a homemade device that looked like it could have been something bad, which was actually just something that her daughter made in science class. And actually, when she was in the bank as well, she found out that her daughter had passed away as well. So if she wasn't already stressed or angry, that was just bad news to just trigger her even more. So that was the whole thing, the whole reason of her running around and trying to get out of work for a little bit was always to help her daughter. And there was quite a lot of good monologues and conversations and things where she would explain herself and the reasons for why she did certain things, and she felt really bad and she felt really confused and things like that, as you would in that situation, because you don't know how you got there and you really don't know how to get out of it. But yeah, in the end, although those things were an accident, she had committed several crimes, and yeah, it was her time to kind of face justice. But again, like I said, the film was called Straw, so it's almost like she was on her last straw, or just the bad straw, or the straw of life, like however you want to think about it. Maybe she was the lone straw, so she was the straw that was sticking in a different direction, or she was the straw that she just couldn't grow. But yeah, at the end of the day, like I said, she'd done some bad stuff, and although she wanted to care for the daughter that she'd nonetheless lost, she had to do time for that. But you never know, there could be a Straw 2. There could be a Straw remix, or one of those spin-off versions of a film. But yeah, I mean, to give it my actual review, the whole film was incredible. Like I said, majority of the cast black, black descent, black culture, which I guess is the whole theme, or was the whole theme of the film anyway. The only people that were perceived in the film that were white people were the kind of the bad characters, the bad cops, the people that weren't treating the other characters with respect, which again is quite a stereotype. But again, at the same time, it's just, I guess, a way of expressing a story or telling a potential story that either could be something that's true, or just telling a story and just spinning the motive and spinning the storyline and the narrative a little bit, which again, like I said, was quite interesting. Obviously, it's sad that we have to see people being treated like this, especially women, but yeah, at the same time, it's almost like at the end, she was strong enough to pull through. She wasn't intending to do anything bad. She just kept putting herself and ending up in difficult and weird situations. It's like, if she would have left the work 10 minutes earlier, she wouldn't have bumped into that policeman. If she would have, potentially gone to work a little bit earlier, she could have got the paycheck before she started work. Then she could have paid the bills and not have got kicked out of her flat. Or, if she would have sold the car, then she could have had a little bit of money to pay the bills then. So it's kind of like a, what if the character had done something else? And that's the one thing that I think a lot of people do when they watch films. They watch it, they analyse it and go, okay, but I could have done that differently, and she could have done that differently, and if they would have done this, then this wouldn't have happened, or if they were 5 minutes late to this, then this person wouldn't have lost their life. So it's all very what if, but I guess that's the whole point of a film, because it makes you think and it makes you talk about it, which I guess that's the whole premise of a film. You want the film to be talked about. You want people to go, oh, remember that film, that this character did this and that person did that, and it's like, oh wow, I haven't seen that, or actually, yeah, I remember that, is there a second one? Boom, then there's a second one, then you might, jump on that as well, and then there might be a third one. So yeah, it's a very interesting world, the film world. Like I said, I've never been part of it. I don't think I ever will anytime soon. But yeah, just in terms of that film, it was very interesting to watch. Again, like I said, it is a bit sad, it is a bit emotional, kind of looking, going, oh no, something bad's happened to her again. But at the same time, it is a learning curve. Sometimes you end up in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people. You hopefully learn from that. You get back up, you build yourself back up from that. And obviously her going to prison, serving time for whatever things they convict her of. I'm not going to say it's going to necessarily change her as a person, because she wasn't a bad person to start with, but it might make her go, actually, I might just be careful with who I hang around with. Maybe I need a new job because the manager isn't, helping me in any way. Maybe, I've lost my daughter now, so maybe I should adopt, or maybe I should start looking for love, or, spend the time with her family that she's got left. The last thing we see is her get into the car, off to the police station, and that's where we end. And I hate when films end, especially when they end like that, because it's kind of like, well, hang on, what happens next? Well, we're never going to know unless they make a part 2. So, yeah, if you did enjoy my review, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This is a bit of a mismatched film review, but I am going to hopefully try and get some more film reviews done. I've got about 15 different films on my phone. Obviously, you've got Netflix, you've got TV shows, you've got all sorts that are out at the moment. And yeah, I will try and stay as relevant and current as I can. But if there's something from 10 years ago, then there's something from 10 years ago, so be it. But yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoyed. If you've got any ideas for a podcast episode, let me know. And until then, thank you for listening, and goodbye.